It's the Trans Amorous Network podcast. I'm Perry.
I'm Remy.
And this is Shannon Scott.
And today we're talking about sex.
A topic we said we would not cover on
That's
our
true.
show.
Did we say that?
Well, this is not a sex show.
Yes, and what we said we wouldn't ask people about their sex lives. We also said...
JK,
But we've kind of avoided the sex talk
We
as
have
it has
avoided.
been.
Well, I think it's important to understand that transamory and all relationships, regardless of how you identify, sex is an important part of that. Not for all relationships, but for most. And so let's
It is. We got to talk about it. I mean, and in the last show we did, we were talking with a gentleman who was talking about how easy it is to talk about sex with trans people and how difficult it can be.
As opposed to cis people.
Yes, as opposed to cis people. So,
and today's show is, we're having this discussion today because of a viewer comment on our website where they wanted us to talk about sex, something that's not very talked about.
Actually, that's right. They wanted us to talk about specifically sex between trans women and cis men, and the perception that our writer had. And you can read this. You can read this comment that this writer had at our website at transamorousnetwork.com. We're doing a blog about it, but this person's perspective, and I couldn't tell whether this person was a trans person or not. So.
They are. It says they are in a
They're
one half of a
Correct.
trans relationship.
Oh, that's what you're right, Remy. That's exactly right.
Yes.
You're right. So the perspective that this person was taking was that one of the problems that this person has with cis men interested in trans women, and why this person often sees them as tranny chasers, is because cis men's sexual perspectives on trans women is informed by or originates from watching too much tranny porn.
Right.
Too much or just...
Getting it from trans porn.
Yeah, getting their ideas.
I think that's something that you could make an argument for across the spectrum. I think
Hail to the
cisgender women could make the same thing. It's like, why does my husband want me to act like a porn star? Well,
Yes.
because your husband watches a lot of porn.
Yes.
He wants to do some freaky shit.
In fact, I think there's been recently some news articles about how porn has influenced young people's perceptions of sex.
Well, yeah. I think society now, sex is much more relaxed and comfortable as opposed to like this intimate thing that happens only with the person you eventually marry.
Agreed.
Sex is more open. Sex is more casual.
Sex is more casual, and I think also. I think that I'm really pulling back from memory here, but I think those other articles about sex and porn and youth was describing how the youth have this idea that sex is going to be this pornographic style type of activity, when in fact, and because of that, when they get into a real sexual situation, they're often let down, or they don't know how to perform in the emotional context of real sexual activity.
It's a very unrealistic, and it's unrealistic, but it's also lacking emotion that really great sex always has.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And then apparently, and I didn't know this, but a lot of the erections in porn are manufactured.
Wait.
Like people inject things into their penis that makes their penis harder and last longer than usual. Yes.
Pumps, injections, fluffers. I mean, it's not just...
Injections? I knew about the other two, but I didn't know about...
Oh, yeah.
Wow, you must really... Wow.
I know.
That's kind of terrifying.
So I think you brought this up. So you're right. It not only is porn influencing all the decisions or the perspectives that transamorous men have on trans women, it's affecting everybody's perspective on sexual relations.
Right.
Absolutely.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
That being said, so I took this comment, listeners and viewers, I took this comment that this person sent us, and I sent it out to this Facebook group I belong to, where there's 30 trans attracted men interested in supporting one another in their transamory. And one of the people wrote back and in response to this message, and basically called the person to the carpet, because they were saying, look, first of all, we got to go back. So one of the claims that this person who wrote this comment made about cis men watching tranny porn and then wanting to have sex with transgender people was that all cis men were wanting transgender women to have to be tops, to top them, and that's the only reason why men were going after trans women. That was this commenter's concern, and that's why this person has a problem with cis men going after trans women, and why this person considers all cis men who go after trans women as tranny chasers.
Essentially.
Wow,
Right.
that's a terrible story to be telling yourself. I mean,
Right.
listen to any one of
Well
us. Listen to, for instance, our last episode was a really fantastic example of how untrue that is.
Yeah.
And that has not been at all my experience.
Well, and it's certainly not my experience when I'm going out, when I have been out looking for trans partners, and I can attest that I don't know of a single one of the 30 men on this group are doing that, and the people we've had on the show aren't doing it.
No.
So that's going on 50 people.
Well, but this individual is obviously very generalizing and making a very broad statement about any man who would be involved, interested, or make moves towards a trans person, is that their motives are they're looking for a trans porn situation.
Yes.
Like that's what they're looking for.
Yes.
And many of trans porn, I mean, there's different kinds of everything.
Yes.
And sometimes there's versatility, or that the trans woman is the top in a lot of porn. So some men, that might be what they're looking for, and that's what this person I think is talking about. Those people who are, that's their individual goal, or at this time in their story, that's where it matches, as that they're just at a chaser status at that point.
And I think more than anything, this speaks very directly to whoever made this comment, to their identity and their own self-worth. Because if the story they're telling themselves is that all men are this way, then of course that's going to become true.
All the men you
but
meet.
if you have incredibly high self-esteem and are confident, and you know that you are worth more than that, and you're more valuable than that, then that reality will also come true.
Can't you say that for anyone who believes in the label tranny chaser, that they have this story and that's why they believe in this label as accurate, because the story is informing the label?
Yes, I think so.
I don't know, because as someone, I understand that there are men out there who are at a point with what I like to call their transition, which we've talked about before, and that they're coming out of the closet and accepting who they are, that they're at that kind of like, let's just dip a toe in. And those are who I see as the quote-unquote chasers, the people who aren't able to engage fully, emotionally, and courageously. So, to speak to your point, I believe that there are chasers out there.
This is very interesting. We're getting a little bit off the topic of sex, but that's okay, I think, if you don't think it's okay with me. So if a man who is not fully courageously embracing his transition as a transamorous man is labeled a chaser because of his behavior.
Because at that time, all he's doing is chasing a sexual fantasy, or chasing a sexual interaction or a sexual encounter, because that's where his mind is at.
And I think it's even more accurate to be labeling his behavior, not him. He is at this point and he's behaving in this way, and those behaviors are what make him a chaser. But they're chasing behaviors. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense what you're saying. What I was gonna draw a parallel, and I hope that trans women listeners and viewers don't throw a shoe at me when I say this.
You got yours ready. Yours off already.
I was going to draw a parallel between that behavior of the men that we're labeling as chasers with the behavior of a trans person who has not courageously embraced their transitionary process and is still dipping their toe in the experience of being a woman. Or a man.
Right. And I think that
what
happens.
What do you call those people?
I was just going to say, is there a label for that? I think that society definitely sees that as what they would stereotypically portray as the negative transgender person.
Yeah, a tranny or a transvestite or something like that. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think if we're talking about technical labels and terms, an individual who is just putting their toe into the water of beginning to dress a different way, beginning to start living slowly in pieces here and there, those fall under our transvestite categories of cross-dressing, right? As far as labels and definitions go. But that doesn't mean that a person who started out as a transvestite or a cross-dresser won't get to a point where they actually realize their transgenderedness and accept that and make the official moves, however many moves those are.
But those people, the transvestites or the cross dressers, I don't think you would describe those people as not courageous.
No, in fact, I know many cross-dressers who are completely comfortable being identifying as heterosexual males. They just
I do
happen
too.
they just happen to like to wear women's clothing, and that can be for sexual reasons, and that can be for other reasons. Although those are harder to define. But there are people who just like, I want to wear a dress, and
Yeah.
I'm a man, and I like cis women.
Yeah. So why would you call a man who is doing analogously the same thing as a crossdresser, but he's exploring his sexual interest in a trans woman?
Because it's
Not
enough of a
courage-
thing that
not
it's been
courageous.
given a title.
Because of the shame.
I'm saying
associated
not
with it.
calling it not courageous.
Because of the shame associated with the self-shaming that happens. Like,
Right,
oftentimes
societal
people
shaming
it's
and
one thing
self-shaming.
to, as that man who is cisgendered and heterosexual who wants to rock a dress, like that's for me is brass. But for the man who is trans attracted and wants to keep it hidden, or in the back rooms, or at this one club where he can go have sex with a transgender person, but is very much then ashamed of that behavior, that's a very different thing. And like, one person is owning who they are
I see.
and breaking the
Breaking the
boundaries,
mold, yeah.
and then other people are not at all. They're breaking the boundaries, but in secrecy and in shame, and that's no way to live.
Yeah.
And so that's really where I find that the term to be most accurate.
I see.
Does that help?
Mhm.
Yeah, it helps with the term, but it doesn't help so much with saying they're not courageous.
I don't know.
Perry, you're very courageous.
Well, how much courage? I hate to compare, but how much courage does it take to do something that you're ashamed of, but you can hold that in yourself and no one will ever see? And how much more courage does it take to know that people are going to see and judge you negatively, and then
And
do
not
it
care,
anyway?
do it
No,
anyway.
I get that. Yeah. I see that. Is I guess we are where we are, right? And
Everyone
so
is where they are in their story
and
at that time, at that moment.
yeah. And so, yes, that person who is in a dress, that male who is in a dress, the presenting as male, who is in a dress out, is at the point where that person has developed the courage to take that step. But at some point before then, that person was not at that step. And that person may have been feeling the same similar shame.
That's a really good point.
Okay, so then
That's a
they've
really good
changed
point.
their story, though. They've grown, they've progressed.
Right, but my
they've
point is,
gained courage
I
or more
underst-
courage
well-
from where they were.
well,
I
yes, but
understand your
do you call that the pre-person, the one who hasn't yet developed the courage? Do you call that person's behavior lacking courage, or is it just a transitionary process where every
Did
step?
anybody say they were lacking courage?
Yeah, Shannon.
I did.
Oh.
I did.
That's why we're talking about it.
I absolutely did. In fact, I can identify with it very closely. In fact, when I first started my transition, I did it in the closet, and
Yeah.
I was ashamed, and
Yeah.
because of the society, the rules that society had built around transitioning and wearing clothes, especially. And here's the important part that I think we all need to remember: especially going from male to female. For instance, for a man to wear woman's garb is
Yes.
completely taboo, but for a woman to wear man's garb is just it's unnoticeable. At
Yeah, it
points
is
sometimes.
almost
For
unnoticeable.
instance, how many women do you know that wear men's basketball shorts? I mean,
All day long.
all the time. And is it a big deal? Do you even notice them walking down the street?
Yeah.
No, but if you see a man wearing women's shorts, oh, well, that's
Yes.
off the chart. It's so hypocritical.
Oh my God, look over there.
Exactly.
It speaks a lot
Duke's
to
on.
Exactly.
it speaks a lot to the misogyny in our culture.
It really does.
So just like check yourself.
Yeah. So back to the sex. So one of the guys in this trans attracted group on Facebook had when referencing the commenters' comment about guys wanting to be topped, and in this comment that this writer made, they also said that the majority of trans women do not want to use their penis.
What he says, or this individual, we're not sure if this
Yeah, we're not
individual
sure.
is male, female, or other.
I'd like to know where those stats came from.
Well, that's
This is right. So, okay.
I mean, I can speak for myself.
Chase their territory solely by the virtue of refusing to understand that sex with trans women very rarely looks like the porn they're watching. The majority of trans women, I'd even venture to say the vast majority, this is someone's opinion,
Well said.
are some combination or at least one of the following. 1, unable to top. Hormone replacement can make a trans woman's erections not fully functional. In that sense, they cannot penetrate with their genitals. 2, understand in or more likely actively turned off by topping. So that the trans individuals, 1, can't get it up, and 2, aren't interested in that in the first place.
Right.
And 3, has some sort of genital or sexual role dysphoria. Most of the women I know fall into all 3 categories, and the rest generally fall into a mixture of 1 and 2 or 1 and 3. The girls who do not fall into these categories aren't porn stereotypes either.
So when I read that part, that whole section, that whole thing you just read, Remy, my initial reaction was, well, of course this person is finding only these people in her network because those are the stories she holds about trans women.
Exactly.
Yeah, and Troy, one of the guys in this trans attracted group, wrote a response to this thing and said, there are straight cis women who do not even have a penis, who more than happily will top a man.
Absolutely. A lot of women like to
Absolutely.
pay.
And enjoy the process of doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
And he said, in the same way, these women that happen to be trans, there are also women who happen to be trans who will more than happily top men. So,
And there are many that don't. And
that's
won't.
right.
Some are, some might be tops, all solely and completely.
Yes.
Some might be versatile,
Yes.
somewhere in between, and willing to share the roles of back and forth. And then some are going to be, your bottom.
Yes.
Labels, right? But he brings out the point that you're talking very generally.
Yes.
You're making a huge, broad statement
Oh my
that
gosh.
all the trans women in the world
Are this one way. Or these 3 ways.
Or these 3 right. Combination of one of 3 ways.
Yes.
And I mean, I can't speak for Shannon, but that's not the case personally with me. I actually don't fit within those categories.
I know too.
You know?
Yeah, I know trans women that are exactly the opposite of what she described.
Right.
And she also, in her comments, makes the broad generalization that. Sorry, thank you. They make the broad generalization that if a man wants to be topped, he must be a chaser.
Not at all true.
No, it's not. And not only are there trans attracted men who are not interested in being topped, there are trans attracted men who prefer trans women to go through SRS. They
Yeah,
don't
absolutely.
want a trans.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I think you made the point, Remy. And the point is that this is a very general assessment, which at being general is inaccurate when it comes down to the individual.
Because there are hundreds of thousands of trans people in America alone, and each one of us is completely different. We are all individuals with a
Yes.
separate story, with a separate background, with a separate possible future, with a separate sense of what our sexual preferences are. Sexual preference is
Yep.
not the same as orientation.
Yep.
It's not the same as gender identity.
This whole thing of the dysphoria also came up in the conversation on Facebook.
Mhm.
Troy was saying that part of the problem for some trans women in being comfortable with their personal anatomy is the dysphoria. His point was, you might have a trans, he didn't know any, but he said, you might have a trans woman who goes through SRS, and after SRS is fine pegging a guy with a strap on, just like a cis woman would.
Right.
Yeah.
He says it's about the dysphoria that causes them to feel weird about their penis or not want to top or something like that.
Sure.
And he also said there's a lot going on about the cultural norms relative to what it means to be a woman, what it means if you are topping a man, what it means if you're being bottomed, if you're a bottom man. All of that stuff plays into this.
Well, I love how in his response to this individual's comment, he He mentioned that he is versatile.
Yes.
And that it has nothing to do with his masculinity.
Exactly, and I love that
Nothing
comment
at all.
because-
And he repeated it a few times. He's like, I had one relationship where she was versatile.
Yes.
Leaning towards top. And it was okay because our energies were fine. And it had nothing to do with my masculinity.
Yes.
Absolutely,
Or my
or his sexual identity. In
Right.
fact, there are just because you enjoy a certain type of sexual act does not define whether you are gay or straight or anything in between.
That's right. That's right.
Mm-hmm. And not all trans women have dysphoria of their genitals. In that
Thank
way.
you.
Not
Absolutely.
all do.
I know one in the
I would probably
Philippines that
say
loves-
many don't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would
We
say
assume.
the same
I think
thing.
society assumes
Yes.
because
Don't
society's understanding is a trans person is someone who believes they were born in the wrong body, therefore they must not like their body, which is why they transition.
Yes.
And in some cases that is the case, but it's a bigger picture than
But
just
the
that.
vast majority of specifically transgender women do not have GRS or gender confirming surgery. They stick with their what I like to call original operating equipment, and it's fine for them. Okay, so don't make these crazy assumptions, and also don't make the assumption that because that's the case they like to top or they don't like to top. It's a case by case
It's a case
basis.
by case.
Right, and if you're not interested in topping or can't perform or whatever, and the gentleman that you're meeting, stories aren't going to match up.
And
Not going to work out.
exactly.
If that's what they have to have, and that's not something you can provide, stories aren't going to match. Not going to happen.
And you know what's interesting about that right there is that is where the tranny chaser label comes from. Two people met up, their desires didn't match. One got butthurt about it because they felt that this person literally butthurt. No, not butthurt, because it didn't happen. And because of that, their disappointment in the mismatch of stories, they made up that this person was wrong and started calling these people tranny chasers. Because they keep meeting people whose stories don't match what they want.
Right. But and they're meeting those people repeatedly because they have a conflicting story.
Exactly,
somewhere.
Remy. Exactly.
There's a conflicting story. They
Exactly.
might want this non-tranny chaser, but that's the way they're saying it. I don't want a tranny chaser.
And
You're
so-
just bringing about more tranny chasing.
Exactly. So, anyway, with that,
With that,
we're at 20 minutes. Let's
stop generalizing people, and no one is the same. We're all different, and your comment is just dumb. That's my opinion. Educate
Love and
yourself.
respect and appreciate
Really.
everybody as individuals.
Yeah.
Educate
Indeed,
yourself.
indeed.
Do some research.
You want to talk about our sponsor?
Our sponsors are The Velvet Rope. They are Portland's premier adult sex-positive social club. You can find them at www.thevelvetropedx.com.
Awesome.
And if they go and they mention that they heard about the Velvet Rope on
yeah.
the Trans Amorous Network, you'll get half off
Your membership fee.
membership.
That's 50%.
50%, which can be substantial in some cases.
All right.
Just saying. Check it out.
Men, step it up. There's already a group out there on Facebook with 30 of you guys out there who are out and proud about their transamory.
And that's just the one we know about.
Good point.
So if you're looking for a strong, courageous partner of your dreams, then be a strong, courageous partner.
That's right.
Step it up, guys.
Step it up.
All right.
We'll see you
Come
next
up to
time.
my level.
Bye next time.
Bye.